On the 13th of August 1917, 18,000 people were gathered at the Cova da Iria in Fatimie, awaiting the fourth apparition. But where were the shepherd children? At noon on cue, a small white cloud appeared out of a clear blue sky, accompanied by the flash of lightning and the roll of thunder. It floated above the oak tree for a moment and then disappeared. But where were Lucy, Jacinta and Francisco? Turned out they'd been kidnapped earlier that day and were being interrogated by the administrator, a Freemason who gave the kids everything he got. Imprisonment, hunger, threats of boiling oil. Nothing worked. The children stood their ground. Meanwhile, the 18,000 pilgrims had grown irate at these events. Irate enough to clamor for the children's release, which was obtained on the Feast of the Assumption 3 days later, causing them to miss the apparition. But Our Lady granted them the promised apparition on August 19th, where she repeated her requests for the daily rosary, penance and sacrifice, and told them that the October miracle would not be as striking on account of the administrator's actions. Then she expressed her desire that a new church be built upon that spot in her honor. The Masons were not to be daunted. In the modest chapel that was later erected upon the site of the apparitions, they placed 5 bombs, destroying the little oak above which Our Lady appeared. The faithful responded by increasing their acts of reparation and indignant protest, and soon a basilica containing 15 rosary chapels came to mark the sacred spot. What a great example of the role of the laity, who neither hesitated from holding civil authorities accountable nor from responding to the church's call to greater holiness. And today? Why, today people won't even glance at the evidence. A mountain of evidence, a mountain range of evidence. They act as if somehow a kidnapping and replacement of a seer of Fatima is out of the question for the servants of Satan. Hello, you just saw they've already done that. You just saw how they took the little children captive and blew the little oak tree to smithereens. But the Judeo-Masons were quick to realize that Jacinta and Francisco weren't the problem. Those paying attention to Our Lady's message already knew that the 2 younger children were promised to be taken to heaven soon, while Lucy had a mission from heaven for which she'd need to stay back. So, Sister Lucy was the one they really needed to work on. And what were their options? She could be kept in a convent, under strict watch. She could be hidden away in a cloister, her visitors screamed. So far, so good. But then along came Father Augustine Fuentes, preparing to be the postulator for the causes of beatification of Sister Lucy's 2 cousins, who interviewed her the day after Christmas 1957. Like Saint Stephen, Sister Lucy fearlessly exposed the enemy's ploys and pointed towards heaven in the form of the 2 last remedies given by Our Lady, the Holy Rosary and devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. She said, "We should not wait for the Holy Father's call to penitence for the whole world to come from Rome," she said. "Neither should we wait for it to come from our bishops in their dioceses, nor from the religious congregations. No, our Lord has already, very often, used these means and the world has not paid attention. This is why it is now necessary for each one of us to begin to reform himself spiritually. Each person must not only save his soul, but also all the souls that God has placed in our path." What now? Like the proto-martyr Stephen, Sister Lucy needed to be silenced, and so she was. 5 years after her prophetic warnings, John the 23rd, in the opening address of his robber council, mocked who he called the prophets of doom, and announced a new springtime in his church. 5 years from then, the decade of silence was broken, and the world was introduced to a smiling, bounding Sister Lucy by the side of Paul VI. Her looks and demeanor aside, the new Lucy introduced an utterly new and unfamiliar Fatima message. Unlike the old Lucy, who awaited 1960 and the publishing of the 3rd secret with dread, the new Lucy stated that Our Lady never asked for the 3rd secret to be revealed in 1960. Old Lucy was very specific about mentioning Russia in the consecration. New Lucy declared that mentioning Russia was unnecessary. Old Lucy limited her warnings to the spiritual chastisement alone. New Lucy claimed the 1984 consecration averted a nuclear war in 1985. Would Old Lucy equate Russia's conversion with the fall of the Soviet Union? Yet, New Lucy credited Gorbachev as an instrument of God in the conversion of Russia. Would the real Sister Lucy or any catechized adult call Jews the chosen people of God? The more fake Lucy talked, the more she began to sound like a puppet for the Opus Dei. And come on, would anybody with basic comprehension connect as fake Lucy did the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary with John Paul II's theatrical assassination event? Just like the red stains on the antipope's white papal vestments don't match the supposed wound, neither does new Lucy match the real Lucy in features, in writing, and as you've just seen in the Fatima message itself. A question to now ask yourself: why is it the first time I'm hearing this? Are you sure you're ready for the answer? Because self-styled custodians of the Fatima message aren't who they say they are. If you have a better answer, you can let us know in the comments. You know what broke the spirit of the administrator while he was interrogating the children? When he threatened to throw little Jacinta into the cauldron of boiling oil, she didn't respond with despair, but with prayer. And that's the lesson for today. Get into a state of grace like little children and then pray. It breaks their spell. Pray for Sister Lucy Truth and everybody involved in breaking the spell of the modernists. Just as the 3 children fought the enemy with prayer, so we, the children of Mary, battered and bruised by the modernist heretics and facing worse torments to come, take recourse to prayer. Remember, Our Lady said her Immaculate Heart would triumph in the end. Better find yourself fighting on the triumphant side before it becomes too late for you to choose.